Afternoon. Welcome to Senate Committee on Human Services. We have 11 bills on the calendar today. The following 3 bills are on consent: SB 219, SB 365, and SB 440. We have a quorum. And but before we go any further, let's establish a quorum. Secretary, please call the roll.
Hurtado?
Here.
Hurtado here. Stone? Here. Stone here. Bell? Here. Bell here. Jackson? Pan? Weiner?
Present.
Weiner here.
Move consent calendar.
Okay. Take up consent calendar. So we just, Secretary,
Okay.
please call the roll.
All right. SB 219, Wilk. The motion is due pass to appropriations with recommendation to the consent calendar. SB 365, Durazo. The motion is due pass as amended to appropriations with recommendation to consent calendar. And SB 440, Pan. The motion is due pass to appropriations with recommendation to the consent calendar. Hurtado?
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. Stone? Stone, aye. Bell? Bell, aye. Jackson? Pan? Weiner?
Aye.
Weiner, aye. So it has 4 votes now. So we'll hold it open.
Okay. What was it?
4-0.
4-0, the bills are out on consent. Is it?
We
right?
we can hold it open for further voting.
And we will go ahead and hold it open. Page.
That's the first one we have.
So we have, which one did you say?
The first one is 360.
Okay. Okay. So we have Senator Mitchell that will be presenting SB 231. No, 321. SB 321. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Here, members. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee consultant for the helpful analysis, helpful in that it gives a great kind of historical perspective of CalWORKS and how the child care CalWORKS stages 1, 2, and 3 system came into being. People often talk about the fact that the early care and education system is broken, and I would argue that it's not, because children receive care in that system every day by the hundreds of thousands. So thank you for that analysis. It paints the full picture of how we got to the current system that we have. Members, SB 321 streamlines Stage 1 child care eligibility rules so that all CalWORKS families are afforded the same benefits of stable, reliable, and consistent child care necessary to improve their family's success. This bill implements key recommendations of the Interagency Task Force on CalWORKS Child Care, a diverse work group of early childhood education stakeholders who labored for over a year, resulting in the policy that is before you today. It's also a priority of the Legislative Women's Caucus. SB 321 builds on the positive impact of recent policy reforms, including the repeal of the maximum family grant rule in 2016, adopting the 12-month eligibility for child care assistance in all Department of Education child care subsidy programs in 2017, and lifting CalWORKS cash grants above deep poverty in 2018 and 19. When California enacted the CalWORKS program in 1997, it made a promise to families that affordable child care would be available to keep their children safe and learning as parents gained the skills they needed, stabilized their families, and re-entered the workforce. In the 20 years since the CalWORKS program was created, and I've been here for every one of them, good Lord, we have learned that uninterrupted and consistent child care is prerequisite for family economic security. Stable early care and education gives families more options to improve their future and gives children a strong start, closing gaps before inequities widen, particularly for low-income children and children of color. With me here today is Naima Fassi, a parent leader from Parent Voices in San Francisco, and Patty Prunuber, who is here with technical expertise from the Children's Law Center, a member of our sponsor coalition for a Stronger California. I ask for an aye vote.
Hello, I want to introduce myself first. My name is Naima Fassi. I am originally from Algeria, and I am a member of Parent Voices in San Francisco. I had my bachelor's degree in psychology and my master's degree in international business and management from my home country. I got married in 2007. But unfortunately, my marriage didn't go well. So I decided to get divorced. It wasn't that easy, so I moved to San Francisco because it's easier for me to be in a big city where there is transportation and like resources for me and my kids. My kids at the time, they were 3 and 4. The first thing that I was thinking of is just to go to CarWorks to get some help because it's really hard. I had my son at 24 weeks. And he was struggling with some health issues. So I went to CalWorks to ask for help. It was really difficult to apply for CalWorks, but I was lucky to get like some benefits. So I got cash aid and I got like CalFresh for each month, which helped a lot. But it's still the struggle didn't go away. Both kids were with me all the time. I remember that I was making like almost 20 calls per day, trying to find housing and also trying to find like employment or childcare for the kids. Because unfortunately the CalWorks haven't mentioned anything about providing me with childcare or support for kids. So I went to another organization and I asked for, I explained my situation and I said, I have 2 kids and I'm, trying to find like a job or going back to school or, like making my life a little bit like better. So they told me, the only option that we have right now is just to put your kids on the waiting list, which is for SF3, San Francisco 3. They put my kids on the waiting list, and I was lucky to. They called me like about 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. They called me and they said your kids are like eligible for childcare. So I find a provider for them, and they started, going to preschool, to daycare. But unfortunately, it didn't go that well because my kids were, overwhelmed. They were, they experienced trauma, and I passed my stress on them because they was always stressed and, trying to do everything at once. So they were all stressed and overwhelmed. So I had to change the childcare again because it was really, it was really hard. And then I decided, when I found another childcare for them, it was almost the same thing. They weren't able to settle down and, focus because, my situation. I didn't have housing at the time. I was just living with a friend of mine with 2 kids in a studio. So I was struggling, most of the time I don't have, the most important thing that I didn't have enough food for for myself and for my both kids. They give us CalFresh, but usually like it stays for about 3 weeks. And then I have to figure out what to do with the rest, like the rest of the time. I use most of the time I use the cash, to buy food. And then after that, when I found that, I decided that, the daycares are not going to work that well for my kids. So I decided to go to the school district. And then I enrolled them in the school district. They started school, and, I feel like they're in good hands. They're more, they have more knowledge with this kind of, kids. They stayed there, and they were stable, and I decided to go back to school. I decided, it's just more convenient to go back to school than go to work because I just felt that way. I started school, and then I had a friend of mine also, what's called the CalWorks. They haven't mentioned anything about going to work or giving me like other options or mentioning anything about childcare. So I decided I went back to school, and then when a friend of mine from City College, she said, when you're thinking to go to work, because she saw me like the struggle with money I have, I have a little money, and most of the time I don't have, I don't have food. And then she said, you have a good option to go and work, like do work study. And you told her, how am I going to do with the kids in case they get sick or if something happen? She said, no, just go for it and, give it a try and see how it's going to work. So I went to work. And then for the first, for the first month, second month, I was kind of scared. I wasn't able to focus. But then after that, I felt comfortable and I started working and my income increased, which is good. And then I felt comfortable. And then that's when childcare, they called me and they said, they have now you have an option to have childcare for like full-time childcare for kids for the whole year. And I was like shocked. They said I was hoping to tell me that like since the beginning, because that's when I needed the most. Now I have so many other options. My kids are grown. At the time they were 5 and 6. I was disappointed because I was hoping to help me, to provide me with resources and help when I need it. Because I felt like if I had all this, these opportunities to know what my options were, I was like, at least I saved those 2 years. I finished my school. By now, I finished my school and I started working full time. But unfortunately, I had no idea about like all the options that that the program supposed to, to offer the clients. So I struggled for all this time with my 2 kids, and I feel now that all this, behavioral issues they were struggling with and all the, what's going on in their lives and my life is just because of, the lack of the information that I haven't received any resources and any help from CalWorks. And now today I'm here, I wanted to share my story because I'm hoping that like other parents in my case, they're not going to experience the same what when I experienced before. I wasted my time and, I was under pressure and under a lot of stress with 2 little kids. And, I'm hoping to, to avoid all this struggle for other parents and other kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Patty Prunuber from the Child Care Law Center. I just want to thank Ms. Fassi and, of course, Senator Mitchell for her authorship of this bill, and we're very thankful for your support. I'm happy to answer any technical questions that you have, but I know that this committee is already very supportive, and we appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. We will now open up for public comment on the bill. Is there anyone who would like to express support for this bill? If so, please come up to the standing microphone and state your name, what organization you represent, and your position of support.
Kevin Aslan, Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organization, and support. Thank you.
Mackenzie Christensen on behalf of the California Alternative Payment Program Association, in support.
Hi, Cristina Hamilton with UDW AFSCME. We are a sponsor and we are in strong support. Thank you.
Brendan Tuig on behalf of Cadango, a large nonprofit early childhood education and early care provider in the San Francisco Bay Area, in support.
Hi, Tim Fitzharris, Child 360 in Los Angeles, in support. Thank you.
Kevin Ensko, Friends Committee on Legislation of California, in support.
Hi, Alex DiCaprio on behalf of First 5 California, in support. Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer Greppy with Parent Voices California, and on behalf of our 15 chapters across the state, we are in strong support. Thank you.
Jess Bartholow, Western Center on Law and Poverty, in support.
Good afternoon, Jackie Wong with Grace and Child Poverty in California, in strong support.
Linda Warner with the California Catholic Conference, in strong support.
Okay, thank you. This bill has bipartisan support, and at this time, I'd like to invite the witnesses in opposition to come forward. Are there any witnesses in opposition?
Move the bill.
Move the bill, okay. Great. Senator Mitchell, would you like to close?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I express appreciation to our Parent Voices chapter member for her willingness to come forward and share her own story. Again, the goal of this bill is both streamlining and creating greater efficiencies. We've done this work for stage 2 and 3 childcare. We think stage 1 childcare, where families are most in flux, to create the stability of 12 months continuous eligibility is probably the right thing to do on behalf of streamlining the program and on behalf of the lives of the family and the families and the children who are receiving the child care services. So we ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. I would like to give the committee members an opportunity to provide any comment if they've, anybody, committee members?
Thank
Bill.
you, ma'am.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. Mr. Secretary, would you mind calling the roll?
No problem. Hurtado?
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. And 6. Oh, and the motion on that bill was due pass to education.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So the bill is out.
Thank you very
and,
much.
Due pass to Senate. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So up next, Senator Caballero on SB 298. Welcome, Senator Caballero.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members. First, I want to thank the committee staff for their work on the analysis. I'm pleased to present SB 298, which will establish specific targets to end deep child poverty in 4 years and reduce child poverty by 50% by 2039. And we're going to be adjusting that number down, which will put us on a path to reducing child poverty in our state. California has the highest poverty rate in the nation. Recent comprehensive studies, such as the report by the Lifting Children and Families Out of Poverty Task Force and the National Academies of Sciences study on child poverty, highlight the devastating number of children living in poverty nationwide and in California. Committee members represent districts with over 62,000 children who live in deep poverty and over 256,000 children who live in poverty. The dire effects of poverty on children are many. It undermines brain development, affects physical and mental health, reduces academic success in schools, increases risky behavior, and leads to less working hours in adult years. These effects create a cycle of poverty that is very difficult to change. Efforts to reduce child poverty have been hampered by a lack of both sustained focus on the problem and a defined, comprehensive plan for measuring progress. To tackle this pressing issue, we need to be strategic and have specific goals to measure our progress. The state has set statewide goals to tackle pressing issues such as climate change, greenhouse gas reduction, energy, and water, and we can do the same for poverty. Reducing child poverty by 50% and effectively ending deep child poverty can be done. Our children deserve the opportunity to thrive and meet their full potential, and I agree with the committee's suggestion, and we're going to work on clarifying intent language. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
I'm Conway Collis, co-chair of the State Lifting Children and Families Out of Poverty Task Force. This bill is crucial. There have essentially been 2 reasons that the state has not made progress in past years at actually reducing the number of children and families in poverty and the 450,000 children in deep poverty in the state. The legislature has done a terrific job in maintaining the safety net and fighting to expand it. But the number and percentage of children in poverty has gone up and down a bit with the economy, but never really been reduced. And there are 2 reasons for that. The first is there has not been a comprehensive evidence-based plan, data-based plan to provide a roadmap to eliminate deep child poverty and reduce overall child poverty by at least 50%. That has now been provided by the task force, and the priority bills have all been introduced as legislation. But the second critical point is there needs to be a stated state goal and then regular measurements to track the progress towards meeting the goal so that this committee and the legislature can make judgments about what else perhaps needs to be done, what changes need to be made in order to meet that goal. So the critical piece in terms of actually reducing child and family poverty in the state is not just implementation of the task force recommendations, but the passage of SB 298 so that there are regular measurements so that you can track progress towards the goal.
Good afternoon, Chair Hurtado and members of the committee. My name is Mari Villaluna. I'm a parent leader representing Parent Voices. When we as families utilize social services, the state requires accountability from us, from me. I myself and we as parents fill out hundreds of forms, copies of our documents. We have to check if there's any changes, we have to provide all information, and we have to constantly prove that we are still eligible for these programs. I was even personally fingerprinted when I applied for CalWorks 2 years ago, so I even had to give it my own fingerprint. SB 298 keeps California accountable to parents like me who are working hard to make ends meet. We like this bill because it says that we're no longer willing to maintain the status quo, that in the 5th largest economy in the world, we shouldn't have to be the highest rate of child poverty in the nation too. This bill provides a comprehensive approach to addressing poverty. For far too long, we have funded some programs at the expense of others, when in reality, low-income families who are living in extreme poverty need all of it. One of my best friends, Junebug, who came to the Capitol one day, told the legislature every month that they budget their family income down to the last drop of milk in their fridge. This is the impact of living in deep poverty in California. I ask you, do you know how much a drop of milk costs? Well, my friend Junebug does. Far too long, families and children have been invisible, like mines in this state, in our society. When people think of poverty, they think of a picture of an adult and usually not our most vulnerable children. I'm a solo parent in a solo parent household with extreme prices in housing and childcare. My family is one of the families this legislation covers. Being invisible in society also further places shame and classist stereotypes upon children and families. Let's open the blinds and shine the light and vote aye and pass SB 298, because the only way to get out of the lowest poverty rate in the nation is to take action. We need your support today as families so we can end deep poverty tomorrow. Thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment. We do know this bill has bipartisan support. Is there anyone who would like to express support for this bill? If so, please come up to the standing microphone and state your name and organization.
Kevin Aslan, Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organization, strong support. Thank you.
Mackenzie Christensen on behalf of the California Alternative Payment Program Association, in support.
Michael Radigan on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, Santa Clara County, in support.
Kurt Child, Disability Rights California, in support.
Lydia Bourne, representing American Academy of Pediatrics, in support.
Kevin Insko, California Interfaith Coalition, which includes the California Catholic Conference, the National Council of Jewish Women, the Friends Committee on Legislation of California, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the Lutheran Office of Public Policy, the Jewish Public Affairs Committee of California, GRACE, and California Church Impact, in strong support.
Linda Warner with the California Catholic Conference, in strong support.
Jess Bartholow with the Western Center on Law and Poverty, in support, and also I've been asked to give support on behalf of the National Center for Youth Law. Thanks.
Patty Prunhuber from the Child Care Law Center, in strong support.
Jennifer Greppi, Parent Voices California. On behalf of our 15 chapters, we are in strong support. Thank you.
I'd like to invite the witnesses in opposition to come forward.
Please move the bill.
Please move the bill. All right. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee, from our committee members?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, how do you envision this working? So, I mean, estimating the impacts of various policy and programs on child poverty and deep poverty, tell me how you think this is going to work.
The part of the work of the Lifting Children and Families Out of Poverty Task Force was to provide a range of criterion measurements that have been the ones that the Stanford Center on Poverty and Inequality, the Budget Center, PPIC, have all used to provide actual measurements based on established criteria. And the idea is to essentially use those same criteria and measurements.
So we will, and it's noted that the committee may suggest some kind of an amendment to clarify that. So we're going to be working with what already is rather than
Making it up.
Clearly, we haven't even accomplished what those kind of theoretical aspirations are. But are you, let me see if I can phrase this right. Are we looking here to do an accountability framework? Is that what this is? Is that your goal? Or is it a programmatic framework?
Well, it's twofold.
Okay.
It's first to actually measure progress towards the goal.
Okay.
So that, I mean, just like running a business, you want to see if what you're doing is working and whether perhaps you need to consider other things. The second is to look at accountability for the programs themselves, to see the legislature can make judgments about are programs working, are they not working, are they being cost effective, all of those kind of issues, so that again you can actually make progress towards the goal. And with regard to the measurements and criteria, the ones the task force used and that are included in the bill are ones that have been used.
Right.
The
I understood
legislature
that.
may want to add them and as things move forward, but for right now, they're the ones that are usable.
Problem with most businesses, their measurement's quite simple. Are they making money? These criteria are a lot more challenging because I know we want to reduce the number of children living in poverty, but there are a lot of aspects to that. So I'm just kind of curious as to how you're measuring that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Senator Pan.
Thank you. So if I understand, you'd have the Department of Social Services do a report every 2 years on this. And, I have to ask this because we're talking about poverty. People are going to say, well, let's look at the state budget, right? A lot of some of it probably is about different programs, but it's about money and what the federal government decides they want to, pass on to the state, and also what we decide the budget of our own general funds. The chair of the budget subcommittee that oversees Health and Human Services. So we look over many of the programs. We just, actually this Thursday, we'll be talking about CalWorks. And I know the chair of our STEAM committee here also serves on that budget subcommittee. How do you see this bill, if it becomes law, interfacing with our budget processes and oversight that we do through the budget?
Do you want me to answer?
Well, I would see it in a number of aspects. Number one is that for the most part, the budget requests are based on assumptions about what good the particular program will do. So what we'll start to get is real data in terms of how much is it costing us and how good is it at reducing poverty. But the other part of it, apart from other issues.
If I could just, so there is a requirement then that the Department of Social Services do an evaluation of each program?
Not an analysis of each program, but what we're doing is we're taking the task force made recommendations in terms of the kinds of prioritizing the programs to actually reduce poverty, and in particular deep poverty. So we'll be looking at those to see if they've been effective in the goal, which is to reduce poverty.
Okay, and how are you going to measure that if you're not going to do an evaluation of the programs?
I think the difference is that there is going to be, for example, if EITC or CalWorks or new targeted child tax credit, there is going to be a look to see what impact that they're having, so that you're in a position to make judgments about those programs. But it doesn't require an analysis of each program themselves in terms of.
Okay, so I just want to clarify again to better understand this. Is there any requirement or desire for example, we have EITC, we have CalWorks, we have CalFresh, we have to at least do a financial analysis or something and say, well, for every dollar we put in, this is how much we're decreasing child poverty. Is that the kind of information that we're hoping to get out of this?
It's more that if there's going to be an expansion, for example, of EITC, just to use an
Right.
example, that you be able to see how many people are now using EITC, how many people are using the expansion, what else might be required in terms of outreach for the program. Those kind of judgments about whether
Okay,
people are able to take advantage
actually, I'm
of it.
going back to my original question, which is then, in order to get that information, then you need to require an evaluation of each program. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but, if EITC, right? And again, I think looking from the budgetary standpoint, perhaps it's like for every dollar we put into this program versus that program, what are we going to get back, right? Right. So if we had $10 million or $100 million, it would be best used being put into X versus Y. I mean, everyone's, so is
This
that?
gives you data to make.
So this would
more
require us,
decisions.
would this bill require people to do that kind of analysis?
Yeah, it's a way to give you data to make for better decision making.
Okay, so I mean, I'm hoping it does, because in terms of being able to then weigh out, well, what's the most effective use of our state funds to try to make the biggest impact on child poverty.
Yeah, I
Correct?
think the challenge is that a traditional evaluation, you go in and it's much deeper and much, you're looking at a number of factors, and we're really trying to get some macro numbers about how is this helping us to achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve.
So I like what you're trying to do. I think there needs to be some more worked out exactly what the end product is and how will we be able to use that end product, we and other stakeholders, to try to help us drive more effective policy making and figure out what's the most effective.
Understand?
Okay, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Any additional questions or comments from the committee? No? Okay, Senator, would you like to close?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the questions and the comments, because ultimately what we want to be able to do is to have a report that helps us to figure out how to best spend our valuable tax dollars and how to make sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck in reducing childhood poverty. So thank you for those questions, and we'll make sure that as the bill proceeds that we take those into consideration. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Caballero. We will vote on this bill. Do we have a motion? Okay. So the motion is due pass to Senate Appropriations Committee. Secretary, please call the roll.
Hurtado?
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. Stone? Aye. Stone, aye. Bell? Aye. Bell, aye. Jackson? Aye. Jackson, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Weiner?
Aye.
Weiner, aye. 6-0.
Vote is 6-0. The bill is out. Thank you. So I'd like to go back to consent calendar for members to add on, and the motion is due pass to Senate Appropriations. Good. Oh.
The consent calendar. So I'll read the items if you, okay. The first item is SB 219, Senator Wilk. The motion is due pass to appropriations with recommendation to consent calendar. The second one is SB 365, Senator Durazo. The motion is due pass as amended to Senate appropriations with recommendation to the consent calendar. The third one is SB 440, Senator Pan. The motion is due pass to Senate appropriations with recommendation to the consent calendar. Chair votes aye. Jackson? Aye. Jackson, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. 6-0. 6-0. It's out, yeah.
So the vote is 6-0, and the bill is the consent calendar bill is officially out. Thank you. So we will go ahead and move to SB 398. Senator Durazo. Welcome, Senator Durazo, to you and your witnesses. We ask that witnesses keep their testimony to 2 to 3 minutes, please. Please feel free to begin when you are ready.
Jennifer Richard from my chief of staff. Current federal law requires the governor of each state to designate a private nonprofit corporation for the protection and advocacy of the rights of persons with disabilities. SB 398 would update that state law regarding California's Protection and Advocacy Agency to conform California law to federal Protection and Advocacy Agency regulations that were adopted in 2015. This bill also specifically clarifies that the meaning of quote-unquote facility or program includes a facility used to house or detain non-citizens for the purpose of civil immigration custody. Sustaining this access is particularly important in light of a recent report by Disability Rights California, which is California's agency and the sponsor of this measure. That report was regarding the treatment of persons with mental illness and other disabilities in the immigration detention at GEO Group's Adelanto ICE Processing Center in San Bernardino County. Among other findings, that report found that Adelanto had inadequate mental health care and medical care for persons with disabilities, made all the worse by the facility's counter-therapeutic conditions and practices. It also found that the GEO Group significantly underreports data on the number of suicide attempts that occur at Adelanto. Though this measure is unopposed, concerns were recently raised by the California Association of Health Facilities and the California Hospital Association, and my sponsor and I have pledged to work with these organizations to try to address their concerns prior to the next policy committee hearing on this bill in Senate Judiciary Committee. Now, if our witnesses can speak, please.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Kurt Child, Disability Rights California. As was mentioned by Senator Durazo, Disability Rights California is the protection and advocacy program for the state of California. We are the largest protection and advocacy program in the country. The importance of this bill is that it takes what is found in three basic different federal statutory schemes that provides protection and advocacy programs, the access to facilities to determine and assess the protection of individuals who have disabilities within those facilities. So that authority extends to not only entering into the facilities, but conducting investigations within those facilities, seeking reports on conditions within the facilities, and then ultimately providing reports to provide some transparency to what happens in the committees or in the facilities. The authority has been, by and large, codified within California state law, and it provides a level of transparency within California. However, there was a set of regulations, federal regulations, developmental disability regulations that were promulgated in 2015, and this bill codifies those regulations along with all of the other statutory authority and regulatory authority that exists in federal law. We do, as the Senator noted, we do add within the definition of a facility the civil immigration detention centers. We have that authority under the federal law, and we want to ensure the transparency and that is noted within state law as well. We have been in most of the detention facilities under this authority in California, and at varying levels of review. We've spent time in the YOLO Youth Facility and Adelanto as well. And I would just note this morning, the LA Times had reported on the termination by the city with a contract with ICE, and as they noted, a loss of layer of oversight that that facility may have. We continue to have and want to ensure that our state law acknowledges that authority to enter those facilities. We would encourage your aye vote on the bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Andrea Rivera, representing the California Immigrant Policy Center. We're here today to testify in support of SB 398, and in particular, a specific provision of the bill which would expand the definition of a facility or a program to include immigrant detention centers. The legislature has taken significant steps to increase oversight of immigrant detention facilities, specifically with the passage of AB 103 in 2017. AB 103 mandates the Attorney General to monitor and produce a report on the conditions that are found in immigrant detention facilities. And the AG's office released the first report earlier this year in February. And in the report, they detail the difficulties that detainees often face when accessing or attempting to access mental health services, and thereby increasing the risk that a detainee can experience a mental health incident. As noted by the ACLU, incidences of suicide and death in immigrant detention facilities are at an all-time high. Federal officials report that approximately 2,000 people are currently detained with mental illnesses and need assistance. However, human rights organizations continuously report repeated instances of detainees not being able to access the mental care that they deserve. Among the most recent tragic cases, Mr. Jose Antonio Franco Gonzalez. He was a Mexican immigrant with a severe mental disability, and he was detained for 5 years with no access to a lawyer or a hearing. Mr. Franco Gonzalez's family was unable to locate him, and he was unable to communicate due to his mental disability. Mr. Franco Gonzalez's case resulted in what is now known as the Franco ruling, requiring legal representation for detainees that are mentally impaired. However, we still have no one to vouch for the conditions that take place inside the inside these facilities, and SB 398, along with all the other state protections, would help ensure that that people that are detained and need mental health assistance receive those services. For these reasons, we respectfully request your support of SB 398.
Thank you. We will now open up for public comment on this bill, SB 398. This bill does have bipartisan support. Is there anyone who would like to express support for this bill? Please come up to the
Aaron
microphone.
Carruthers, State Council on Developmental Disabilities, rising in support of the bill. Thank you.
Kevin Aslan, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organization, strong support. Thank you.
I'd like to invite the witnesses in opposition up to the microphone. Do we have any? Okay. No one in opposition? Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to express their opposition to this bill? No? Okay, great. Move the bill, all right. So, do members of the committee have any questions or comments for Senator Bell?
This discussion took place, and we had a discussion in the Mental Health Caucus about this issue and a presentation, and how would I put it? I think the general consensus was outraged that these conditions existed in California. To me, it's the kind of thing that if something was done with the children, especially, I would wonder why we do business with them in many other areas. So it'd be kind of a question, what other contracts do we have at the state level with companies that don't observe our laws, treat our children this way? I kind of wonder why we should do business with these organizations. So I would strongly recommend this bill. We have to stand up for these the rights of people, and this is a human rights issue. So I would strongly urge support for this.
Thank you, Senator Durazo. Would you like to close?
I ask for your aye vote. Thank you
Okay,
very
great.
much.
So we have a motion, and the motion is to pass to Senate Judiciary Committee. Secretary, please call the roll.
Hurtado?
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Jackson? Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Weiner?
Aye.
Weiner, aye. That's 5-0.
Okay. The count is 5-0, and we will hold the bill, and it will be on call. Okay? Thank you.
Madam Chair and members.
Our next bill, we have Senator Skinner to present Senate Bill 337. Welcome, Senator Skinner, and to your witnesses. Please feel free to begin when you're ready.
Thanks so much. My witnesses will come up to the table. I'll just start. So SB 337 deals with the fact that there's a federal law that says if you are a family that receives benefits, for example, WIC or CalFresh, that if there is a non-custodial parent paying child support benefits, you, the family that is the custodial parent, only receives $50 of the payment of that child support. And the remaining child support payment goes to the government to cover these benefits. And of course, if the non-custodial parent cannot afford to make those payments, then fines and interest accrue, and even to the point where it becomes a crime and is punishable by a crime. So what SB 337 does is two things. One, it benefits the children by saying, look, if the non-custodial parent has the ability to pay, then that payment should go directly to the family and cover the costs of the children. So the family can receive more than $50. And if that custodial parent, non-custodial, gets in arrears, that it is no longer a criminal factor, but we can pursue, as we do under there's lots of other statutes in California law to try to help collect that arrears child support, but that the debt that may have arisen due to this federal law the state can expunge it. So then there is the non-custodial parent, if they are in a position finally to be able to pay their arrears child support, it can go to the children, and it hasn't accrued these outrageous interests and such, which basically keeps that non-custodial parent in poverty and really inability to pay for the child care, or the child support. Yes, okay, so that's what it does. And now I'm going to allow my witnesses, who are Krista Brown, right, from the Financial Justice Project in SF, and Ronnell Hampton from Growing Greatness.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ronnell Hampton. I'm super excited to be presenting today. Growing up one of 6 kids, I experienced how hard it was for my mother raising us. Due to federal and state child support policies, my mother only received $50 of the $600 that was being garnished from my father's paycheck. That money could have been used to avoid our lights and water being cut off at times, or even going to support my college expenses when I graduated from high school. Instead, my siblings and I had to mature a lot earlier than we should have to fill that financial gap. While many of our peers were focused on schools, we found ways to fill that financial gap in our household. We carried groceries, we pumped gas, washed cars, and even sold candy to help out our mom. We missed tutoring opportunities, sporting events, family outings because of child support policy. Skinner's Senate Bill 337 is going to address or help to redirect that child support funds directly to the children and families who really need them and who those funds are intended for. My personal experience directly represents one of the reasons why this is such an important bill to push forward. And so this will ensure that moving forward, children and families in California do not get wealth extracted out of their families due to child support policy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Krista Brown, and I'm with the Financial Justice Project in the San Francisco Treasurer's Office. We co-authored this report that reveals that every year, hundreds of thousands of families do not receive their full child support payment. That's because families like Ronnell's that receive public benefits only get the first $50 of their child support payment. The rest is redirected to repay the cost of public assistance like Medi-Cal and CalWORKs. Last year, California collected $410 million on behalf of children who received CalWORKs, the poorest children in our state. Only a fraction of those payments actually went through to children. 90%, $638 million, were redirected to repay the cost of public assistance. These policies take valuable resources from low-income children, disproportionately harm children of color, and set up low-income parents to fail. We've heard from countless families that this system drives parents to work in the underground economy so they can send their earnings through to their family. It creates conflict between parents because the custodial parent often doesn't know how much the non-custodial parent is actually paying on their child's behalf. Other states have already taken a stand to right this historic wrong. Colorado is the first state to pass through 100% of parents' payments through to their children in 2017. And child support payments went up 63%. Parents paid more because they knew that the money was going to where it should, to their children. We are in support of Senator Skinner's SB 337 and encourage the senators to right this historic wrong and put children and families first.
Thank you. We will go ahead and open up for public comment at this point.
Thank you. Jessica Bartholow from the Western Center on Law and Poverty. We're sponsor and support. And I'm here for technical assistance.
Kevin Aslan, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organization, strong support. Thank you.
Kurt Child, Disability Rights California, and I will speak from the position of a number of years ago, back in 2000, as the founding director of the California Department of Child Support Services. We understood then the importance of dollars getting directly to families and the impact that it has, and it continues to be true. It's been a tough nut to crack, but this is the right bill to try and do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this bill has bipartisan support, but do we have any witnesses in opposition to that would like to come forward? No? Okay. Do members of the committee have any questions? Senator Stone and then Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Skinner. Thank you for bringing the bill forward. I'm kind of outraged by this whole program. This is, I'm new on this committee, and I always thought that the contributions made by the non-custodial parent were being directly benefiting the kids. We all know that the amount of help that those living in poverty get from the government isn't often enough to keep them well taken care of. Young man, you're a prime example of that, and congratulations to you for your success in moving out of poverty. This is the right thing to do, and it allows certainly the non-custodial payer to know that they're doing their fair share to take care of their kids without supplanting the state budget that is giving money on another hand. So I really applaud you bringing it forward. I'd even like to be added as a co-author if possible, because I feel so strongly about your effort here today and would be happy to move it at the appropriate time, and appreciate the witnesses stepping forward as well.
Thank you. I will do that.
Senator Stone. Senator Jackson.
Thank you. So in a prior life, I had the joyful pleasure of trying to collect child support on behalf of clients I had. This was before we even handed this over to the DA's office, and then we took it away from the DA's and created a separate division of child support enforcement. Because collecting child support has always been an enormous challenge. Sadly, parents should understand and take responsibility for supporting their children. Part of the problem, just to sort of give some context to my good colleague from Temecula, was that in the past, the notion that people were actually had the audacity to collect welfare. It was suggested that the welfare system had to be reimbursed. And so that money, instead of going to these children, had to go back to the state for these programs. At least that was the policy back then. The level of poverty that young children are in, or the children experience today, is so appalling that there's no question that we need to be doing this. My only concern, though, well, two things. One is the federal government hammered the state of California for years because we were not obtaining the child support collection rates that we were supposed to. So we paid enormous penalties to the federal government in the hundreds of millions of dollars annually because we didn't have an effective child support collection system so the money could go back to the public fisc. We then, I think, after a lot of hard work, fixed that problem. I'm appalled, frankly, that we're still not giving the money directly to the children, so I share that with Senator Stone. But that was the argument, is that if the taxpayer has to be paying for these children because the parent won't, then we're going to take the money that we get from the parents and reimburse the state for it. And the children, obviously, were the ones who suffered. There's still a challenge today, and I wonder, well, two things. One is that as far as federal law is concerned, because if we don't comply with federal law, we get hammered. And I'd rather see that money going to our kids. The second concern I have, and I understand that if you make child support so onerous, you won't get the non-custodial parent to pay it. But on the other hand, I don't want to give non-custodial parents excuses not to pay their responsibility to their children. So I'm wondering if you can, and that's a balance, if you can respond, because I'm sure you feel the same way. How do we make sure, and I would submit to you, because I saw this happen in my practice years ago, that there are non-custodial parents who just aren't going to pay. They don't want to. They're not going to do it. And so they go to the underground economy. They do all their business in cash. They don't have any desire, sadly, to support their children. There's nothing that rankles me more than that. So I'm wondering how you, and I'm sure that rankles you too, because people need to take responsibility. How does this bill address that challenge?
Madam Chair, may I answer?
Through the chair.
Yes, please. Okay. The bill does not let off the hook the non-custodial parent. But what it does is, so the custodial parent can still pursue the collection to the non-custodial. What it does is just guarantee that whatever the non-custodial parent pays goes to the children, which is the absurdity of our current system, in that we're spending a lot of money, we the state, to go after and collect, but then whatever it is we do collect doesn't even go to the children. And the reason we were being penalized, the state of California, by the feds, is because we had not discharged that debt. Under the law, we were allowed to discharge the debt, but we didn't, and so instead, we showed a debt, and then we had low recovery of it, which unfortunately, low recovery is not unusual because you're talking about, by and large, people that even the non-custodial parent is not necessarily high income. But certainly, there's evidence, as was indicated through the experience of Colorado, that once the parent understands that their money is actually going to the children, they're more willing to pay, and more payment actually comes to the children. So that's our hope. And yes, we would still allow every legal right for the family, the custodial parent to recover any of that payment that's still owed to them.
Okay, I just note that, again, it doesn't resolve the entire issue, but I hear what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it, and I will be happy to move the bill unless Senator Stone already did that.
Do we have any additional comments from committee members? Okay. All right, Senator Skinner, would you like to close?
Thank you. I ask for your aye vote.
So we have a motion. The motion is due pass to Senate Judiciary. Secretary, please call the roll.
Hurtado?
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. 6-0.
So the vote is 6-0. The bill is out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Skinner. Up next, we have Senate Bill 687 by Senator Rubio. Welcome, Senator Rubio, and to your witnesses. We ask that witnesses keep their testimony 2 to 3 minutes. Please begin when you are ready.
Good afternoon, members and committee. Today I'm presenting SB 687, a bill to increase the effectiveness, diversity, and equity of homeless policies by including veteran college students and parents with lived experiences of homelessness in the state's effort to address the California's homeless crisis. I would like to thank the chair and the committee for working with my office, and I'm happy to take committee amendments that would clarify that training be provided to all members of the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council. The Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council serves as a statewide facilitator, coordinator, and policy development resource on ending homelessness in California. The council is made up of 17 members representing governmental departments and stakeholder organizations, and only 2 members with lived experiences of homelessness, 1 formerly homeless person and 1 formerly homeless youth. All of these groups, college students, veterans, and parents, make up significant parts of California's homeless population, and their voices deserve to be heard. Each of these new appointees will bring a unique perspective to help address California's homeless crisis. And today I'm honored to have with me Nate Vasquez, a formerly homeless veteran who is here to share his lived experience with the homelessness.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Nate Vasquez, and I'm proud to be here to testify in support of Senate Bill 687 by Senator Rubio. Today I want to share with you my lived experiences with homelessness. I had a difficult childhood. At age 18, I joined the Marine Corps as an infantryman. I was deployed to Iraq in addition to operations in Kosovo and the Horn of Africa. My service-connected injuries include epileptic traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress disorder. After my enlistment, I did my best to overcome these conditions. I was married and had 2 sons. I had good jobs and attended UC Davis on a full scholarship. But the effect my physical and mental conditions had on my relationships and my ability to go to work and school was overwhelming. And it wasn't always easy for me to access medical treatment and medications. After lapsing in treatment and medications, my wife left me. I lost my job. I dropped out of school and was evicted from several apartments. I became homeless. At first, I couch surfed with friends, but I always left before it overtaxed my friendships. I sometimes stayed in cheap motels, shelters, Often I was unsheltered. I experienced violence and discrimination when I was homeless. Without treatment and medications, I began to experience suicidal thoughts, and my behavior became very aggressive. I had regular altercations with law enforcement. I was constantly in jail and psychiatric facilities. I was ready to give up on myself and cash it in, but then I was offered admission to the Sacramento Veterans Treatment Court. Veterans Treatment Court is a rigorous treatment and supervision program. It requires participants to form and follow a treatment plan with VA providers, mentorship from a fellow veteran, and probation supervision. After a lot of hard work, trials, and tribulations, I graduated from the program. The Veterans Treatment Court community has become my family. I still participate as an alumni. I'm well integrated into treatment at the VA. I have good relationships with my providers and peers, and I have healthy and positive interactions with law enforcement. The VA helped me to get an apartment, so now I'm able to spend time with my sons and be the father they need. And I'm also volunteering in the community and supporting my brothers and sisters in the veteran community. My experiences are not exceptional. Homelessness disproportionately affects veterans and persons with mental and neurological illnesses. It affects parents and children, employees and students, friends and loved ones. I value Senator Rubio's bill because it will include voices like mine from people who have lived experiences with homelessness to share in the state's efforts to address California's homelessness crisis. Thank you, and I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you for your testimony, and we will now open for public comment on this bill. Okay. Okay. I'd like to invite any witnesses in opposition that are here. No, none? Okay. Move the bill, all right. Questions from the committee members? No? Okay. Senator Rubio?
In fact, I do have a question. You indicated you attended Veterans Treatment Court.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that in Orange County?
Sacramento.
In Sacramento County, okay. Well, as a big supporter of these treatment courts, you're a good example. Congratulations. Okay, thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? No? Committee? Okay. Senator Rubio, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank Nate Vasquez for having the courage to come and tell his story. And on behalf of Nate and all the other homeless populations, I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rubio. We have a motion by Senator Pan to do, Senator Bell, pardon me, sorry. Do pass as amended to Senate Housing Committee. Secretary, please call the roll.
Hurtado?
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. Stone? Stone, aye. Bell? Bell, aye. Jackson? Aye. Jackson, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Weiner?
Aye.
Weiner, aye. 6-0.
The vote is 6-0, and the bill is out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So up next, we have Senator Weiner on to present SB 268. Welcome, Senator Weiner. Please feel free to begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members, colleagues. SB 268 eliminates the cash asset test and the vehicle asset test in CalWORKs. Currently, for CalWORKs recipient, an applicant is allowed to have no more than $2,250 in cash assets in order to qualify for CalWORKs. If a person has the gall to accumulate any additional savings beyond that, they're not eligible for CalWORKs. In addition, the vehicle asset test for CalWORKs limits the value of someone's car to $9,500. So if a car happens to be worth more than that, the car that you use to get to work or to school, then you are ineligible. The costs associated with these asset tests, which are not required by federal law, is huge. A recent study by Howard University estimated cost savings of eliminating the asset tests at $163 million. Californians are currently being discouraged from saving money by this asset test. We should be wanting low-income people to try to move out of poverty, and you do that by saving money. But if saving money means you no longer get benefits, that's a huge disincentive to saving. We also know that a lot of people, of course, need their car just to survive. So we should not be creating an incentive not to have a car, or to have a car that perhaps doesn't work so well. Other states in the U.S. have passed similar legislation to move away from these asset tests, and California should do the same. Again, it's not required by federal law. With me today to testify in support of the bill are Jess Bartholow on behalf of the Western Center on Law and Poverty, and Becky Gershon on behalf of the California Association of Food Banks. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Good afternoon. My name is Becky Gershon from the California Association of Food Banks. We are in strong support of SB 268. Our network of 41 food banks and over 6,000 agency partners have a mission to end hunger in California. And we know that amongst the hundreds of thousands of families that access free groceries every day, CalWORKs families are amongst the poorest of those that come to our resource centers. The CalWORKs program is just one of the tools that our state has in addressing deep poverty, but it's flawed, as you heard, because instead of it encouraging families to save resources and grow their financial stability, it actually discourages efforts towards self-sufficiency. Currently, the CalWORKs program basically requires a family to have hit absolute rock bottom before they can get really modest amounts of aid. And food banks are part of the safety net that steps in when people really don't have other options, and when government programs that are meant to kick in these times have failed them. So the idea that families already living on the edge of poverty are discouraged or even penalized for having modest savings is both cruel and I think counterproductive. So the CalWORKs grants are meant to help families get back on their feet, and in order to stay true to that mission, we strongly believe that we need to repeal the asset test. So we ask for your support on this as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Jessica Bartholow with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. I'm also the chairperson of the steering committee for the statewide California Asset Building Coalition that's also in support. As you heard, this policy not only discourages savings, but it sends the wrong message, not just to CalWORKs recipients, but also to the community. You've seen us in Budget Committee, you've seen us in Policy Committee that testify time and time again that people who receive CalWORKs receive just not even enough to meet their basic needs. And it's definitely our experience that the asset test doesn't hurt most the people on aid because they have so little. They can barely take care of what they need to pay today, not to mention put away savings. But who it does hurt the most are the applicants. Now, if you look at the number of the applicants coming in, it's less than 1% of applicants that actually end up in being denied benefit because of this rule. But 100% of the applicants actually have to show their paperwork and either prove that they don't have assets or that their assets are low enough. And 100% of the social workers who receive those applicants have to do the same. And that's time away from helping people find homes, helping them remove barriers to work, helping them apply for their welfare to work placement. 100% of the applicants have to go and get copies of their bank statements. If they don't have a bank statement, they have to figure out a way to prove they don't have a bank statement. Again, you heard about the efficiencies that can be gained by removing the asset test and that have been gained in states that have done so. And we believe that those efficiencies can be plowed back into the program to provide better support for people coming in and applying for assistance and making sure that they don't have to hit the floor before they get a little help. So with that, we urge your support of this bill to strengthen our safety net and support families who are coming in and seeking aid in order to maintain stability. Thanks.
Thank you. We will now open it up to public comment on this bill. Do we have anyone in support?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Frank Mecca, the Executive Director of the County Welfare Directors Association, and we're in strong support. Income and resources are what people need to move to poverty, and our workers and members would rather spend time helping people move toward self-sufficiency, get jobs, than chasing paper that's just serving to impoverish people. Thanks.
And just please state your name and organization.
Kevin Aslan, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organization, strong support. Generally, CalWorks recipients who are on welfare have no, last week of the month they starve. They have nothing to save. Now and then somebody may get $5,000 from a relative or whatever, and then they cut them off. They have to spend it. Doesn't make sense. So we support this bill.
Thank you.
Kurt Child, Disability Rights California, in support.
Thank you. Do we have any witnesses in opposition? Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from committee members? Senator Bell?
I think this is one of the biggest evils of the CalWorks system. I noticed that Senator Stone has tried to deal with this. I tried to deal with this. We've had a problem in the appropriations committees because they don't recognize that actually helping people create assets is a good thing. I think that's the problem. I don't understand them. I never understood the methodology of the appropriators in considering that. Can you comment on that? Which, you know, this is like a historical problem with the appropriations committees. Am I right? And can you comment on how we can overcome that misinformation? I think that's in what I consider a faulty way of looking at this issue from the appropriations committees.
Senator, I could comment for a lengthy period of time about the appropriation process. We always have
problem.
We have fantastic current and former chairs of the appropriations committee. You and I, of course, were members of that committee. We have incredible staff, but I'm, you know, there are times when things happen in the appropriations process that it's unclear why. And I think sometimes whenever you have a big price tag, it does cause focus in terms of being held on suspense. So we have made a budget request. I'm not going to put the chair of that budget subcommittee on the spot right now. I see it sitting right here. But we're trying to do it the right way, making a budget request and trying to get this funded in the budget. And if that means that the bill gets absorbed into the budget, I'd be happy to have that happen. But we're pretty determined to try to make this happen this year. I don't know if Ms. Bartholow would like to add on to that.
Yeah, maybe you can comment on about how come have they looked at it wrong in terms of the way they analyze the cost? I think it saves money when you allow people to allow savings. That's what we want to encourage. We want to encourage CalWorks parents to help their children and have a transportation ability. So.
Well, first, Senator Bell, thank you for your leadership in this area in the past legislation proposals. I think in general there's a propensity to cite cost pressures. We always hear this, there's cost pressures. And I always try to remind people that there's also savings pressures. And the savings pressures don't often get identified in the Appropriations Committee. When we talk about, we won't have to spend so much on homeless assistance if families can have a little cushion to cover their rent when their wages are short. If we can look at the savings pressures for these types of programs and how they impact low-income families, I think that would be a great benefit in the appropriations process, and I encourage you to join us in requesting those kinds of considerations be made.
I'm proud to be a co-author of the bill.
Thank you.
Senator Stone and then Senator Pan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Wiener, the assessed value of more than $9,500 with the vehicle, I assume that's the net value of the vehicles. Because my report says assessed value, so you could have a $9,500 vehicle, but they own $8,000 on the vehicle. That's certainly not the delta that we're ingratiating these people with, right? So I assume it's net value?
The current proposal is just to repeal the asset test, and the vehicle test is part and parcel of the asset test, so it would just repeal it. and it would say, we're not going to gather information about the Blue Book value of your car or your bank
Under
account.
existing law today.
Yeah, under
it
existing
says
law.
The value is assessed at $9,500. Does it take into consideration the balances owed on that?
It's just the amount that you owe. We actually changed that law with the support of the Republican caucus a couple of budgets ago, where it used to be the value of the car total, and we changed it to be just the amount the person owed in the value.
The net value. That would be net. I think that would be the net value.
Yeah.
Net value, okay, which is better. I agree with what you're trying to do. I don't think people should be discouraged from savings and trying to lift themselves out of poverty. I think this forces people to live on the edge, which I think is wrong. But, and I'm not saying that this is going to be prevalent among this population, but you know, what if somebody comes into an inheritance? We heard a guy mention $5,000. That's not as much money as I was thinking. Somebody came into $50,000. Should there not be some test of their cash on hand under the penalty of perjury? They don't have $20,000 cash on hand, so that we don't have anybody gaming the system.
I mean, I think if you come into that level or a high level of wealth, it could be the case you're going to be generating income off of that, most likely, and that income may by itself disqualify you. So for, let's say, an extreme example, you know, someone inherits $1 million, you're probably going to be making way too much to even be
But I think
eligible.
somebody
so.
$15,000, $20,000 to come into it, you know, at rates in the bank today at 0.25% or 1%, you're not going to get that kind of income threshold. I'm just wondering, do we need some kind of a test to make sure that we're helping all the people that really need the help?
I guess my take on it, if you, people living in poverty who are on CalWorks, and let's say they inherit $15,000 or $20,000, and that's money, let's say they put that in savings so a kid can go to college, or they can pay some bills that they're behind, or whatever, or they just keep it in savings in case they need it for rent one day. That doesn't bother me at all. I think the natural limit, if you're happen to be inheriting so much money that it would really seem obscene, the interest in that is probably going to disqualify them from receiving CalWorks. So I don't think that, and I don't think that that's been experienced in the other states that don't have the asset test, because fortunately, even California, we like to think of ourselves on the cutting edge of a lot of issues, but I've learned since coming up here that there are a lot of issues where we're lagging other states, including some red states, and this is one of them. And so fortunately, we don't have to be the test case. We know how it's worked in other states, and I don't think that's been an issue.
I would just add that the research does bear that out, that in the other states that have passed the TANF asset test repeals, they have not had expansion in their TANF population. And I would add that people who inherit a lot of wealth probably have other ways, like tax credits and things like that, to benefit. When you go to apply for public benefits, you have to comply with the welfare to work rules. You have to give away all the information about your household, your privacy. This is it's a system in which you open up all your vulnerabilities. If somebody has extreme wealth, they would not subject themselves to that kind of scrutiny in order to get a couple $100 a month. There's a lot of other ways that the government is giving them an extra couple $100 a month with that kind of wealth. And then finally, I would say this policy, if passed, aligns our asset test with federal law for CalFresh and with federal law for Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal recipients with children also have waived asset tests. So we align all three programs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Pan?
Thank you, and since you called me out, I figured this
not by name.
And I understand this is not an appropriations committee. I would make note that every member of the budget subcommittee actually is present right here. But I guess the question I have for you, and I know it's may cross a little line to the money side, but so how many people are we talking about that get excluded from the asset test? Like, I mean, So I certainly get the point that it costs the state a lot of money to do it, to go and ask the questions and require people to provide proof and all this other stuff. And in the end, after we put people through the ringer for that, how many people do we simply say, oh, too much, too bad? And I realize that sometimes people may already know, so they're not going to try. But I'm trying to get a sense of, like, and you said other states have tried this. Exactly how many people are we talking about?
Yeah. And I'll ask Ms. Bartholow to answer that specific question. But I think that what you just mentioned is the bigger issue. It's not just about who's getting kicked off. It's about people saying, well, I better not save any money or I'm going to lose my benefits. Right. So it's sort of the message that it sends, and so that they never get kicked off, but they're not saving money.
And it's in our letter of support, but the extensive research on this topic, but you're looking at less than 1% of the applicants. Right. The work of 100% of applicants, with less than 1% actually ever being denied on the current, with the current law.
So I'm just, again, thinking about, even on the money side, realizing this is the policy committee, but since you referenced the budget, I mean, part of me is just thinking, like, well, the amount of money we're saving by decreasing the overhead in the process, is that, I mean, how does that compare with the amount of, quote, money that we're going to spend extra because we've increases our caseload? I guess that's going to be, I mean, what's generating the expense in this bill? I mean, I realize that's probably, that's maybe a little more of a probes type question, but I think part of me is going, like, well, if it's only 1%, how much more expensive could this be to do this bill than not, right? And where does appropriations people, like, why did they say this is expensive?
So it's not like a mega expensive. I signed the letter. I think it was $8 million. $8 million. Okay. I don't think it's a mega expense. But of course, the way the appropriations process works is, even if you're going to save more than you spend, that doesn't take you out of suspense, right?
All right. So, well, since there's a budget request, I'll be interested in looking at both sides of that. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Penn. Senator Jackson.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that we're talking, the potential for abuse is de minimis, but sometimes all it takes is that one bad example, and then suddenly a program is undermined, and I don't want to see that either. So I'm wondering, is there some kind of ongoing basis? So in other words, if I discover I have a rich aunt because I've just inherited, let's say, $200,000, or let's say a house, is there something under existing CalWORKs rules that requires, if I were to come into something like that I would have to report it in order to be able to continue? If that's the case, I have no problem with this. I don't mind 20,000. I don't mind 30. But we're not talking about the people who get to take tax credits and what have you. Those people I'm not at all concerned about. I'm concerned about people who at some point find that they come into some level of, I won't call it wealth, but some level of, benefit that is significant enough that it might have affected their CalWORKs if they had reported it.
Well, I think, if you're talking about, hundreds of thousands of dollars,
let's say 50,000.
At some point, again, the income that you're earning from that wealth is going to disqualify you from CalWORKs. And I do agree with Ms. Bartholow that when you're talking about receiving a pretty modest amount of money, CalWORKs is not, you're not receiving a lot of money per month. I think it would be really, really exceptional that someone who's come into a significant amount of money.
So let me give you a specific example. All right, let's assume as a hypothetical that someone comes into $75,000 from an uncle they didn't know about. They're on CalWORKs. Do they have any responsibility to report that money?
Under this bill, no.
Do they have?
However, if they put it into an account and they drew down the money on a monthly basis to pay their bills, it would be counted under current law as income. So if the money sat in the account, if this bill passed and the $75,000 sat in the account and they didn't touch it, they couldn't use it. But if they'd continue to receive aid. But if they drew that money down and more than once, then they would end up having to count it as income. Under the law currently, and if passed, resources drawn down from an account on a regular basis count not only for CalWORKs benefit, but also for CalFresh benefits. So
they have to self-report? I'm just trying to figure.
Yeah, so under current law, if they got the $75,000, and I just have to say, like, lucky them for their uncle.
Absolutely.
My uncles, what they leave me is not any of that. But if they,
I'm happy to be an adopted relative, but let's assume that happens.
So
There'll
if
be
they
one
got-
instance where it does, and suddenly everything will be.
So if they got the money today, they'd have to report it today as an asset, and it would make them ineligible immediately. But if this bill passed and they got the money, they wouldn't report it as an asset. The minute they started drawing it down to use it, they'd have to report it as income. And that income would have to be counted in food stamps and CalWORKs or SNAP.
Okay.
CalFresh and
Thank
CalWORKs.
you.
And so that might help you.
Yeah, it does. I just, there has to be some protection there because, I don't want to hear the word welfare queen one more time. And, that if everything is so open and 99.9% of the people are following the rules, it's that 1% that hurts you. So I'm hoping we don't get
But we
that.
haven't, in the other states that do this has not been an issue. So, there can always be an extreme situation.
Okay. Well, to the extent that we have, so there is a reporting mechanism and all, I'm comfortable with the bill.
And I can send you that citation as well.
Senator Bell, did you have some further comments?
Just that the type of areas where you could save is in terms of the simplification that we're talking about here, is it be consistent with the CalWORKs process, the CalFresh process, I think child care programs. You want to have the eligibility process be all the same. And the bill does that. When they have to, the eligibility worker at the county, when they have to go back and check assets and do all this kind of stuff, it's added cost, it costs more money, it's cumbersome, and you're doing it for a small number of people compared to CalFresh or Medi-Cal. So the Medi-Cal population is way over, 12, 13 million people. The CalFresh, what are we at, 5 million? 4 million, and in CalWORKs, how many applications in California? Yeah, we have fewer than 750,000. So for me, to make this program consistent with everything and have a simplified application process is a goal to save money, and it would save money. So I think the bill would actually save money on the administrative processing of this program as well as the other programs. You wouldn't have to be able to get a lot more work done without having to go through this cumbersome asset test program.
Thank you, Senator. Any further comments? If not, would you like to call Senator Wiener?
Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Okay, this is going to be going where next? To appropriations. Do we have a motion? Senator Pan has moved the bill to appropriations. If you please call the roll.
Hurtado? Stone?
No.
Stone, no. Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Jackson? Jackson, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. 4-1.
4-1, and we're going to keep the roll open, Senator. Thank you very much for your testimonies. Okay, Senator Pan, SB 421.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. California is home to over 9 million children, and while child welfare has always been a priority for the state of California, we still have among the worst outcomes for children, health, education, and juvenile justice. For example, California ranks 41st in per student spending. We rank 43rd for the rate of young kids receiving developmental screenings, although we hope to change that. And half of kids in California foster care have endured 4 or more childhood adverse expense, or sometimes known as ACEs, which were more likely to lead to chronic disease in adulthood. We do have multiple state agencies and departments providing direct services that aim to alleviate these challenges, and yet we've had some challenges in trying to move the needle on these measures of child well-being. A children's cabinet made of key agency leaders can help mobilize efforts and resources around state priorities for children and improve efficiency and state delivery across state and local departments. SB 421 would establish the Children's Cabinet to develop a shared vision among the branches of government in order to improve child and family outcomes in California. The National Governors Association considers children's cabinets a best practice and has set forth guiding principles for establishing a children's cabinet. I look forward to utilizing these guiding principles and working with stakeholders to refine the Children's Cabinet's specific goals, timelines, and membership in order to ensure its success. And certainly, as mentioned, as a chair of the Budget Subcommittee of Health and Human Services, I think we see all the different agencies and we notice sometimes the silos they tend to reside in. And so this is an opportunity to, again, try to bridge those silos and have an organization within the administration that will do high-level but coordinated efforts to help improve outcomes for children. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Penn. Could we have any testimony in favor? Please come forward. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Danielle Kando-Kaiser on behalf of Common Sense Kids Action in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lydia Bourne, American Academy of Pediatrics in support.
Thank you. Any others in support, please come forward. If not, is there any opposition to SB 421? Please come forward. Seeing none, I'll come back to our fellow senators. Is there a motion or a question? Senator Jackson?
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating idea and appreciate our resident pediatrician recognizing the importance here of having some kind of recognition of sort of the continuum, which is what it sounds like you're trying to create here. But I'm wondering, how could you kind of share how you envision this happening?
Well, I think that we do have. I think the idea is that we have the senior leadership in the various agencies that touch children, and the idea is that that hopefully they would be sort of the place where the administration can think strategically and then think about how we can cross those different silos, because I think the biggest challenge is that you have different silos. So I used to chair a select committee on children with special needs, and we have special ed was in education, right? And then we had developmental services was in social services, and then you have the health and the mental health and Department of Health and Human Services. So what happens is that you have things fragmented across different agencies. And in fact, actually, interesting enough, when we had one of our first hearings, I would say that most of the time they hadn't even talked to each other. That was the first time they heard from each other what each of them were doing for specifically children with special needs. So given that what the Select Committee was about. And I think we need this larger oversight. And we have things like Strategic Growth Council and other types of bodies within the administration that have been placed to look strategically across things. And I think we need one for children specifically, and certainly hope that this bill will prompt that kind of discussion and also lead to eventually an organization. We want to work with the administration as well on this, so as the bill moves forward.
If I may, one other question is, I don't recall seeing, are there any other states that have done anything similar to this?
There are other states that have children's cabinets, and as I mentioned, it's considered a best practice by the National Governors Association. So there are other states that have children's cabinets.
And is this modeled after them, or would this be unique to California?
Well, I think we are looking at using the National Governors Association's best practices as a guidance to the development of this. But of course, again, we want to work with the current administration, who has expressed a tremendous interest in children and in shaping it in a way that best meets the needs of California.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when the governor has 4 little children, 10 years of age and under. They kind of can't help themselves, can they?
Yes.
Great. Well, that's a good thing. Thank you, Senator. I'll move the bill.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion by Senator Jackson. Any other further questions? If not, we're going to call the roll. This is going to where?
The
Motion is due pass to Governmental Organization Committee.
Okay, please call the roll.
Hurtado, Stone.
Aye.
Stone, aye. Bell. Bell, aye. Jackson. Aye. Jackson, aye. Pan.
Aye.
Pan, aye. Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. That's 5-0.
It's 5-0.
5-0.
5-0. We're going to hold the roll open. Senator Pan, thank you. Congratulations.
And he has
Any
a
other
second
bill?
He has a second bill.
5 out of 10. SB 512.
Yes, thank you so very much, Chair, Vice Chair, members, for this opportunity to present SB 512, and I think of which takes the first critical step to creating a new long-term services and supports, or LTSS, benefit for California. The need for this legislation, this new benefit, is urgent. Almost 8 million people who are either older adults or individuals with physical and mental disabilities currently live in California, and this population will grow significantly over the next decade. Unfortunately, many Unfortunately, many Californians lack access to affordable LTSS services. Long-term services and supports are not adequately covered by Medicare, and most Californians cannot afford to purchase private long-term care insurance. Paying out of pocket for LTSS is highly expensive and creates significant financial and social burden for families. Alternatively, and unfortunately this is perhaps the most frequent scenario, Californians must spend down through their life savings to become eligible for Medi-Cal. And too often, this is the primary means by which older adults and individuals with disabilities currently receive access to paid long-term support and services. Medi-Cal is a critical safety net, but this system is overburdened. Individuals shouldn't have to impoverish themselves and spend their life savings and their children's inheritance or forgo working and generating earned income in order to have access to the services they need to live independent, high-quality lives. This legislation is creating a framework for the management of a long-term service and supports benefit to be available for all Californians. Specifically, SB 512 creates the infrastructure modeled after the CalSavers Secure Choice program for when California is ready to design and finance this new benefit. Indeed, the legislation is sponsored by the California Aging and Disability Alliance, which represents 20 organizations across the spectrum of LTSS stakeholders. We need to move forward now to put these critical pieces in place so that we can continue moving forward with benefit and financing design. So with that, I have many witnesses in support here, and I appreciate their patience in waiting to this very end of the hearing, and I hope to have your aye vote when we conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We welcome your witnesses.
So, good evening, and thank you for having us here. I'm Nina Weiler-Harwell with AARP California, a proud member of the California Aging and Disability Alliance, of course, in strong support of this bill. I'm going to introduce our speaker today, Conrado Camarino. He's an AARP volunteer and caregiver coming here all the way from Fairfield, and also a retired Air Force veteran. So, go ahead.
For your service.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As mentioned, my name is Conrado Camarino. I volunteer with AARP, and I have been a caregiver for multiple family members. As mentioned, AARP is a member of the California Aging and Disability Alliance, which is sponsoring this SB 512. And it is a high priority bill for AARP because LTSS costs more than most Californians can afford. AARP research from 2018 showed that the average annual cost of nursing home care is about double the median income for older households. About $116,000 per year for a private room and $97,000 for a shared room. Hiring a home care provider, and this is something I'm familiar about because of my mom, costs for 30 hours a week, costs between $23,000 to $40,000 a year, depending on where you are, depending on location. Most families simply cannot afford this. In fact, only 5% of Californians, 5%, were able to purchase long-term care policy. SB 512 is also very important to me personally. I lost both my father and my mother-in-law last year, and our family spent tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket to take care of our parents. We also have had to take time off from work, leave our families behind, and have had to navigate the fragmented, disjointed patchwork of services that could be available to our loved ones. My wife and her 6 siblings, thank God for big Filipino families, took turns taking care of my mother-in-law dying of pancreatic cancer. A sister-in-law flew from West Virginia to Torrance, California, stayed weeks at a time, and took care of my mother-in-law. Another sister-in-law flew in from North Carolina, did the same thing. And my wife and I drove, and sometimes we flew, from Fairfield to Torrance. The other 4 siblings who live in Southern Cal also had to spend time off from work as they took their turn sitting by my mother-in-law's bedside, administering to her needs. My father was 91 years old when he passed away last year. He often had multiple doctor's appointments weekly, and we had to transport him. Well, he took paratransit in Hayward, but he needed to go to dialysis clinics, 3 times a week. Just 1 hour appointment for him, thank you. Just 1 hour appointment for him is a whole day affair for me because I had to drive from Fairfield, pick him up at Hayward, and then took him to doctors in the Bay Area. And my mother, my lone surviving parent, lives in Alameda, and she will turn 86 next month, 8th of May. For a long time, she struggled because her monthly pension was $20 above the threshold for her to qualify for Medi-Cal. And it took a lot of time and research and networking to find her to secure her in-home services. So because of these experiences, I became an ARP volunteer. I hope for a time when families will have better options so that they won't have to spend as much out of pocket to take care of their families as my families did. And they won't have to take time off from work dealing with lost wages and future Social Security income. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service and your testimony.
Hello, good evening. My name is Cristina Mills. I'm the Executive Director of the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. We are a strong supporter of SB 512 and a member of the California Aging and Disability Alliance, which I just want to point out is very uniquely positioned in working with people with disabilities across the lifespan, as well as the aging community to push SB 512 forward. I have with me today a member of the Sacramento community who, like me, was born with a disability and has had to make some difficult choices because of LTSS services that are and are not available to those with disabilities.
Welcome.
Good evening, Senators. As mentioned, my name is Kim Lathrop. I am 33 years old and I live with a disability. I was born without arms and legs. I also am born and raised here in Sacramento, and I'm a registered voter. I have also been receiving long-term supports and services since I was 17 years old. I would like to thank you for your time today, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 512. Ever since I was young, I was always told that working full-time and keeping my long-term services and supports is just not realistic. Hearing this created the desire within me to want to work full-time even more. I wanted to come home at night knowing that not only did I do my part in contributing and giving back to my communities, but that I also did my part as a tax-paying American to contribute to our country. A few years ago, my dream became a reality when I was offered my very first internship. Shortly after, my internship turned into a part-time job, and eventually I was given the opportunity to work full-time. It was a difficult decision for me to make, however, because I knew there was only so much income I could earn in order to keep my long-term supports and services. Nonetheless, I optimistically moved forward, always making sure that I never went over the income threshold as to not jeopardize my long-term supports and services. But in December of 2017, my father passed away, and I began receiving some of his benefits. This meant there was no way I could keep my earned income and my long-term supports and services. In that moment, I was faced with a choice: to either lose my personal services, which consists of my health care and my personal care attendance that enables me to live independently, or I would have to quit my job. A job that I worked so hard for, a job that I was growing my skills in, and where I was building my community and network through. I felt heartbroken that I was forced to give up everything that I worked so hard for, And I was also disappointed to know that I was going to be kept on government assistance and that I was generally just taking a step backwards in my life. But there would be no way I could afford out-of-pocket costs with health care on my earned income alone. So I did quit my job just to maintain living in my home and living independently. I am not alone. There are so many people with disabilities across California who are forced to make these decisions every day. Whether we choose to pursue jobs, careers, and earn income, or keep the services and supports that allows us to live independently in our own homes. This decision is not fair, and it's always placed on people with disabilities. With your support of SB 512, there will be more options available for people like myself so that they will not be forced into these unfair situations. With SB 512, there will be more opportunities for us to be given the chance to pursue a career without risking our services that we need in order to live the life we deserve, to live safely and independently in our own homes and within our communities. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Okay, do we have any others in support of SB 512? Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members, Roxanne Gould representing 6 Beds, which is an association of small 6 beds or fewer residential care facilities for the elderly and developmentally disabled. We're in strong support of the bill. The only thing we would like to have is a more robust representation of providers on the board, if possible.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chair and members, Jed Hampton with Leading Age California, a proud member of the California Aging and Disability Alliance, and strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Chair, members. Blake Johnson here on behalf of State Treasurer Fiona Ma, here in strong support.
Thank you.
Chair and members, Ramon Casablanc, representing California Alliance of Retired Americans with over 1 million members across the state of California, in strong support.
Peter Hansel with CalPACE, representing the programs of all-inclusive care for the elderly, caring for over 8,000 frail seniors and older adults in the community, in strong support of the bill.
Thank you.
Kurt Child, Disability Rights California, and a member of the Alliance in strong support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Amy Blumberg on behalf of the California Association of Health Facilities, representing 900 skilled nursing facilities and 400 intermediate care facilities in the state, in support.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Joaquín, del Condado de Madera. Soy proveedor de HICC y apoyo 512 por nuestros ciudadanos, personas con disabilidades. Deben ser nuestra prioridad y cuidarlos.
Hello, my name is Joaquin. I am from Madera County. I am an IHSS provider and UDW member, and I strongly support SB 512 because seniors and people with disabilities should be the top priority, not an afterthought.
Gracias, Joaquin.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Imai Hong. I'm here on behalf of 2 organizations, Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employers Network, and the California Domestic Workers Coalition, in support of SB 512. Our members include people who both receive LTSS and people who provide it. And we see this as being a really important step to creating the 21st century system that we need. I wanted to share 2 more examples. We heard really powerful examples right now, and I met with 2 people just last week who could really benefit from this bill and from what it could create. One is a family caregiver living in Santa Cruz County who's supporting her father. She became her father's family caregiver who got Alzheimer's after having been a city architect and working for 2 different cities in the Bay Area. He lives off a pension, but this is going to be the first month that their family can't afford all of the costs for his home care, as well as his rent and his housing. Similarly, I met a woman who has lived with MS for the last 40 years. She ran the senior center for the city of Los Angeles, also has a pension, does not qualify for Medicaid, similar to the gentleman I was just speaking of, and barely squeaks by. She's literally, one pension pay away from losing her housing if anything were to change in her expenses. So this is a real need. Thank you.
If you could just give your name, organization, position.
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members, Robert Harris on behalf of SEIU California and our 700,000 members and their families, in strong support and a member of the coalition.
Thank you.
Good morning, Cristina Hamilton with UDW, representing IHSS workers, also in strong support. We're members of the coalition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members. Thank you. Cheryl Kasai, representing California State Independent Living Council. And also personally, I'm a part-time caregiver for my 90-year-old mother who lives with me and in strong support. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Susan DeMorris here on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association and a member of the Alliance. The average lifetime cost of Alzheimer's disease is just under $350,000. We support SB 512.
Thank you.
Carol Sewell from the California Commission on Aging, also a member of the Alliance, and we strongly support this effort.
Thank you.
Kristen Heyman with the California Association for Adult Day Services and also a member of the Alliance in support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elaine Queen, Merced County IHSS provider, UDW member. I strongly support SB 512 because it is a proactive forward process to approaching a hugely growing human concern.
Thank you.
Della Perales, home care provider, Stanislaus County. I'm in strong support of this bill because no one should have to become poor just to afford care. My daughter left a very good paying job to care for my grandson who sustained a TBI, which left him wheelchair-bound and nonverbal. They own their home, and they should not have to sell their home just to be able to, should something happen to them as a parent. And they're nearing 50 themselves, and they may need care. I may need care.
Thank you. Any more in support of this bill? If not, please call the opposition forward. I'll hand it back to our chair.
No witnesses in opposition. Do we have any comments from our committee members? Move the bill. All right. Senator Pan, would you like to close?
I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
All right. So
You passed a governmental organization.
So we have a motion to for due pass to Senate Governmental Organization Committee. Secretary, please call the roll.
Hurtado?
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Weiner?
Aye.
Weiner, aye. 6-0.
The vote is 6-0. The bill is out. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the roll to open on items 2, item 7, item 8. Items 2, item 7, and item 8. Yeah, you did. We're going to take care of that.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and open the roll.
All right. So the first one is item 2, SB 268, Weiner. The motion is due pass to Appropriations Committee. The chair has not voted. The vote is 4-1. Hurtado?
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. That's 5-1. And so that bill is out.
The vote is 5-1, and that bill is out.
The next one is SB 398, Durazo. The motion is due pass to Judiciary Committee. Chair votes aye. Jackson.
Aye.
Jackson, aye. That's 6-0.
So the vote is 6-0, and that bill is out.
And then item 8, SB 421, Pan. The motion is due pass to Governmental Organization Committee. The vote is 5-0. Chair has not voted. Hurtado.
Aye.
Hurtado, aye. 6-0.
The vote is 6-0, and that bill is out.
Okay.
And this ends our committee hearing for today for the Senate Human Services. Thank you so much for being here.